Subscribe and click on the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest videos.
I was not really bothered about calling out somebody as powerful as Mr. Vairamuthu, but it was, the woman is generally asked to be careful. So a lot of people stepped down. People like Pappu Venugopal Rao were removed from key posts, even from the music academy. The way MJ Akbar or even Suhail Seth has behaved, your generation is beginning to date a little more openly than our generation ever had.
Hey guys, I'm Sanjit and I'm here with a playback singer and the face of a revolution, Chinmayi. Hello Chinmayi, pleasure to have you here.
Thanks.
So you're the face of such a movement in the industry. You're bringing about such a change. I'm sure there's such a huge weight on your shoulders. So how you feel about it? Do you feel glad that you're bringing about a change, or are you saddened that this change is even required, or is it a mixture of both? How are you feeling?
It's a mixture of both, because I think right from casual sexism to women have to grin and bear it every time they just step out of their homes. The woman is generally asked to be careful. A man is never asked to be careful. A woman is never, told that you'll be safe, go out, nobody will do anything. She has to watch how she wears, even salwar kameez. Several years ago, there was this cover story on women wearing leggings and how it is turning men on, right? So that is the kind of society that's changing, and there was a lot of hue and cry. A lot of women raised their voices against those stories as well. So it's in a way, one by one, a lot of women and men are speaking up. They are raising their voice against everything from casual sexism to heinous crimes like rape. So if you had to look at the number of gang rapes, that are reported on a daily basis in the newspaper, you'll know what sort of a society we live in. It's a good thing though that finally these people are at least going to the police station and reporting and getting these people behind bars. And I think what we are all going through on a general daily basis is, usual first degree, second degree, men that make us uncomfortable with their gaze, the male gaze, or men just casually groping with intention, that is. We're not talking about friends, we're not talking about men who make us feel safe in their, company. We're talking about men who utilize advantage, whether if they are in public transport, or men who work with you, or men who make you distinctly feel uncomfortable. All of this, so many things that a woman will have to go through and fight it out on a daily basis to even exist.
It's true, because as a man, I can't understand, but maybe I can empathize that everyday activities like going to the gym or taking public transport or going to work, for example, is a threat when you're a woman, because there are so many men who like to or try to take advantage. So what is the solution, and how do we combat? There are heinous crimes which can be legally combated, but everyday sexism, like you said, what is the step that we can take?
I think it'll have to start with dialogue. It'll have to start with all of us talking to our own friends now, especially after Me Too and the Me Too wave, the second wave of Me Too, because the first wave started because of Raya Sarkar's list of academicians and sexual harassment in the academia. So a lot of people stepped down. People like Pappu Venugopal Rao were removed from key posts, even from the music academy, and that happened so silently that nobody even knew about it. But that Pappu Venugopal Rao is a serial predator is in the whisper circles. People just talk about it. This is the second wave. Tanushree Datta filing that case, and then the first tweets went out from Manisha Kukreja's account, Twitter, and then from the Restless Quill, Sandhya Menon. Sandhya Menon is a journalist. Manisha Kukreja, I'm unaware of what exactly she does, but her tweets first spoke about predators in the stand-up comedian, circuit. So we saw Utsav and him sending women genitalia pics and all these unnecessary texts that went out. That then went into journalism, and today MJ Akbar has stepped down. He was forced to resign. It's not as if the government made him resign, but he was forced to resign after mounting public pressure. So, you see the kind of, if you see the kind of accounts that these women are talking about, the way MJ Akbar or even Suhail Seth has behaved, just generally violating women's bodies the way that they want it, right. How do we prevent that? Now I see men saying that I'm asking friends, I'm asking, see, I have joked about all this, is that comfortable, is that okay with you? So such conversations have started between men, between women and men, between women. I mean, because there is a lot of worry even between women that they don't want to be identified as feminists, because feminism is somehow associated with blood curdling, fire spitting sort of a movement, but that's not what it is. Feminism has tried to get women their rights to even vote. Feminism is talking about everyday, human rights of equal pay. It's talking about gender based violence, female genital mutilation. There's so many serious issues that feminism addresses. So a lot of women are afraid of being called feminists. So they're saying, I'm not a feminist, but I just want to. So it's almost as if I'm not into human rights, but I just want to say that everybody should be equal. I mean, like, that's what feminism talks about as well. So how does it start? What is lasting? It starts from homes, because you might think that I'm somebody who is exposed stuff in the industry, which is not true. I have spoken about a lot more in the Carnatic music industry. Actually, a lot of musicians who are in very respectable positions as gurus, as teachers, who are given a position of respect, a position of eminence and a position of devotion, if one might say, because they are treated equal to God, right. So when I have exposed a lot more such names, because students are afraid of talking about their own gurus, because these gurus are respected by their own families. What do I do? How will I tell my parents? So I have had a lot more people saying that they quit learning music because they didn't want to deal with a guru like that. And the more disturbing thing is not about famous people, it's not about people of eminence, it's more about everyday families, normal families, out of the media glare, in their own private spaces, people in their own families, uncles, grandfathers and brothers and cousins and stepfathers. The number of stories that have come through, I think more than the weight of going through, I was not really bothered about calling out somebody as powerful as Mr. Vairamuthu, but it was the weight of these stories that came to me, which I did not expect. It was an outpouring of every woman and several men who shared how they got sodomized, raped by their own family members while they were children. So it left me feeling very helpless, that there is nothing that I can do to correct that wrong. There is nothing that I can do to heal. There is nothing that I can do to remove those predators from society. So at that point in time, you wish for these onion type, Superman type characters who can just probably come and then in one shot just remove all these people from society in one fell swoop. But unfortunately that can't happen. So I think, how does this happen? So why did all these people stay silent all this while? It's because they were not sure as to whom they can go and speak to. Even if women can have a sister, in the sense not biological sister, she'll eventually at some point go and confide in a girl, right? Sadly, men don't even have that, not even with their closest of friends. They're very afraid of sharing that they got sexually assaulted by another man, for fear of being for fear of their sexuality being questioned, and if somebody will make fun of them. There are a lot more issues that men carry than women do. In some families, the women might even go and tell their mother or their own sister or somebody else in their family that this such and such person misbehaved with me, or if they were somebody like me, they would tell their husband. 100% you'll find a girl telling a friend that confiding in a friend or somebody she trusts, but that sort of an agency even men don't have, and that is terrible. And if there are girls and men with these binary identities, there are people who are of intersex identities, trans men and trans women, who have gotten used to and have become habituated to sexual assault, to so normal as, okay, I need to have lunch and dinner, so okay, I'll get assaulted today. So there's so much that's happening in society on a daily basis that we are unaware of. I wasn't aware of the kind of sexual assaults trans men and trans women go through if I hadn't even heard about it. I didn't know there is something called as male, female and intersex people. There is man, woman and trans man and trans woman, and there is he, she and z. I didn't know about all this if I hadn't started talking and asking questions. So how do we bring about lasting change? By creating our own small micro circles, in our own friends and family. When we congregate for festivals, talk about all this, talk about if there is a relative that made somebody uncomfortable, because almost every family in their smaller or their extended family circle seems to have one such relative who seems to have misbehaved with a child. I can't think of, I mean, if there is one family that, I'm talking about the extended families, because India is all about all our second and third and fourth and fifth cousins which will all congregate, and there is always one uncle that comes through who has sexually assaulted a child and who is afraid of telling, because that particular uncle is friends with everybody and you are afraid of, standing up against authority. So how do you change? How do you make lasting change? Open your ears, tell people that you are open to listening to these stories, make your own family safe. Eventually workplaces will become safe, and at your workplace find out if POSH or POSH guidelines and Vishaka guidelines are followed. How do we go about doing this? Discuss openly about what is dating, what is casual flirting, and if that casual flirting, either girl or guy, if it makes either of them comfortable or uncomfortable, where do you draw the line? And that even if two people are beginning to date, both of them should have this conversation that if there is something that makes either of them uncomfortable,
Very true. Need
stop.
to set boundaries.
Just say stop, it's okay. I mean, this is a country where we have just started talking about marital rape, right? So it's going to be very difficult to draw those lines and talk about consent. So even if it has been a consensual relationship, and if at some point in time that consent has been violated at any, all these dialogues need to happen, discussions and conversations need to happen. And we have been a very frigid society. We don't believe in talking about sexuality and attraction, and for fear of being branded loose or slut shamed and things like that, right? So this is also a country where people in the cities are slowly beginning to date. Your generation is beginning to date a little more openly than our generation ever had. So I'm 33 now. I wouldn't have dreamt of openly telling people that I'm going out on a date. But if you're in your mid-20s today, that 9-year gap makes a huge difference. Your youth is different than my youth.
True, yeah.
You can actually say you have an app called Tinder, and you can tell your friends that you're on Tinder and that you went out on a date. I came from I think in the mid-2000s or the mid-noughties as they call it. You didn't have apps. Dating was, oh my God, wrong. It's unsafe. So this is a space where casual dating is accepted in cities, that is. And you are looking at tier 2 towns and tier 1 towns where people are wondering what is dating, right? What are the moral codes? What are the etiquettes? What is my virtue? If I went out on a date, how will I no longer be wanted in the marriage market? So all these conversations will very slowly start happening in towns, but at least in cities, it's time that we started speaking about consent, especially those who are dating, they're out there, they're meeting a lot of women, they're working with women, there is a social setting, and you might have also known as men who know, you guys know how to take care of the women in your group. You care for them, you make sure that they reach home safe. Why are you worried if your friend reaches home safe? You should be in a society eventually where you're no longer worried that if you're...
they'll be safe.
Where you know that you're always asking, I have friends like that, asking, Akka, have you reached home safe?
But that shouldn't be necessary.
It shouldn't be necessary. By default, any girl across ages, is asked to sit properly, cover your legs, no matter, even if it's a baby, everybody is afraid of covering up the girl faster than the boy, right? From the time that they are children. So if you notice, people, if a child is just, if a 4-year-old is just sitting and playing around, and if she's wearing a frock, the first thing that they do is go and try and cover up the frock, right? This is Chennai, it's hot as hell. And a baby can't just go around and...
It's sick that 4-year-olds have to be covered up. It's
Yeah, can you imagine
shameful,
that?
yeah. It's
So, and if you wear sleeveless and shorts, you're asking for it. If you wear clothes like that, if you're asking for it. Thankfully, I think at least on social media, especially after the Nirbhaya case, a lot of our conversations have changed, because we saw what happened during Nirbhaya. We saw how people asked her, people were generally asking questions. What was a girl doing in the middle of the night with a boy?
Why was she in a public transport?
Yeah, with a boy.
With a boy.
So, thankfully from there we have changed, but have we is another question, because a couple of months ago there was this hearing impaired child who was raped by 16 men. First question they asked, why did the girl not say? The child is hearing impaired. She had no idea what was going on. Of all the adults that she met, 16 of the adults that she met raped her, and she didn't even realize what was going on. Nobody is teaching sex education, nobody is teaching about good touch and bad touch. So one adult after the other takes her and rapes her, and she doesn't know it is rape. This is a society that questioned a child like that. Even now, I've been trying to convince a lot of these girls to actually file cases with the National Commission of Women. The NCW is coming forward and saying, please file cases with us, we'll take it forward. Most of them are not willing to come forward. Some of my own colleagues are not willing to come forward with their names, put their names to their stories and say, yes, I said this, in spite of this movement. Because they are afraid that their husbands will not let them work anymore. They are afraid their mothers are worried about their safety. Their mothers are worried if they will become soft targets in the future. That is the biggest fear. What if a girl comes out with a story like this and she becomes a soft target in the future? So, there's so much that, what happened to me was groping, right? A man putting his hand on me without my permission. And especially a man who I trusted, I believed I was safe with, and I held him in a position of respect. Violating that respect in the first place and misbehaving, as they call it, sexual misconduct. So, at least I ran away. I could do that, and I made sure that I navigated every other session and professional session that I would never have to be alone with him again. I would tell people in my closest circles, apparently. I have also forgotten that because I've shut all those memories down, I don't even remember saying that, but I finally have friends telling me that, I remember you're telling me that, Vairamuthu groped you, and you're telling me that you don't want to talk to him. Can you avoid my talking to him, and things like that. I remember all this only because somebody is reminding me of it. So you would have had girls and your friends telling you, can you please make sure that, I am not allowed around this particular person. He gives me the creeps, or I feel uncomfortable around this person. So can you please make sure that don't let me go alone. Don't leave me alone with this particular person. So there are men like you who help the girls in your group, the women in your group. You go with your mom, you make sure that she is safe. So we have men like you who are taking care of our interests, and we have some really bad, terrible men who make sure that they can make us feel uncomfortable at every given point in time.
And another thing is, even though we're seeing a lot of change and we're seeing a lot of progress, there are still people criticizing, saying things like, why haven't the women spoken up earlier? Why haven't you spoken up earlier? They keep asking all those kinds of questions. I understand that when something traumatic like this happens, it's not as simple as just coming out and talking about it. It's not that easy. But what would you have to say to these people to maybe help them understand?
I think if all of these people just went back to their own families, asked their own friends about instances of misconduct like this, they will understand how many women have kept silent. Women are trained from childhood to keep quiet if something like this happens to them. They are not trained to come out and say this in the open, because this generally it is a society that shames the victim. They are told about the repercussions of coming out with a story like this. Velila sollada, don't talk about it. You will be shamed. They will say it is your fault. Sometimes a predator has said that the victim asked for it. When a rape victim has come forward, the rapist has more often than not always said that she asked me to come sleep with her. And he said that even with children. There have been cases on record, this has happened. So, it is very difficult for women or men to come out with these stories to say that, you know, we were sexually assaulted as children, or everybody has had somebody, if they haven't gone through it themselves, they have had somebody gone through sexual assault as a child, starting from their childhood to their adulthood. And why did you not speak earlier? For everything there is, there has to come a time when society is also receptive to something like this. Even now, I think the society is split in the middle. There are 50%, they're like, finally we are talking about it, and there are 50% is like, maybe not 50, 30% is like, no, shut up, and 20% is like, they don't understand how to react. 20% are numb. They don't know this way or that. They don't have anything to say. So, yeah, I don't blame them for asking questions like, why didn't you, ask me or tell earlier? I did tell. I just didn't say it out. In public and didn't share it on Twitter. But I just believe that sharing my story would make it clear that every woman, no matter who, goes through something like this. And I wanted more women and men to come forward with their stories, saying that this is normal. And don't normalize sexual misconduct. Don't normalize sexual assault. Everyday sexual misconduct. That's what I'm saying. We know, at least there have been a couple of these women who came forward with their stories of rape. And I said, why haven't you gone to the police? Even if it's after several years, you can go to the police for rape cases. Please go. They are not willing to. They fear shame, they fear that the society will treat them differently, that they will not get married, or their husband might leave them, or their family will no longer talk to them. It's the general shame that the victim carries, which is why he or she never really comes out to share, even now.
Now that this movement is in full flow, many women, like all over the place, they're coming up with their own stories, they're talking about their experiences. But what now people are doing is they're twisting this as now every woman wants the attention. Now every woman is trying to, ride the bandwagon instead of understanding that this is so rampant. They try to talk about how everybody is craving the attention. So
nobody needs attention from sharing stories like this.
Very true.
Nobody needs this attention. Nobody wants this attention. Nobody wants somebody asking you what exactly happened, how did he touch you, how did you go there in the first, when you share a story like this, there are like a million other, everybody becomes one CID officer. They become investigative officers asking you, how does this happen, when did they call you, how did you go, so you have to recount and recount and recount.
Did you do anything that could have initiated, did you misunderstand, all those
recount
questions.
and recount the same story, and then you're like, okay, no longer. Women want to get attention for the work they did. In office, outside, they want to get attention for the achievements, they want to get attention for the work they do even at home, even for the general food that is put on the table. Women want to get the attention from the general work that they do every day at home, that it's so easily taken for granted. People complain that why isn't the bed sheet folded this way, why aren't the clothes made that way, why is the water... Nobody even talks about sharing, workload at home. It's always still the woman's bastion. So many things like that. Women would love their attention coming from work and everything else. And finally, for the achievements that they are doing otherwise, women finally have the opportunity to talk about this. So, society should just listen. Just listen.
And another criticism that about you particularly, I've seen around on Twitter, is that that you have retweeted many allegations and people feel you haven't really taken the steps they think you should have to verify it. So what do you have to say? Do you feel that you have done enough?
Retweeting, see, most of the stories that I shared, the stories that I shared myself came from friends, came from colleagues I've worked with. And when you understand this, you understand that a lot of these predators are repeat offenders. You see a pattern in it. And these women, from what I have known of them and how I've worked with them, aren't people who would randomly just, share a story. With others, the other women, as I said, Sandhya Menon herself is a journalist, right? So there were people who took her into confidence because she was sharing these stories from people, and she got a lot of DMs and stories from people who owned verified accounts like mine on Twitter, people who put their name to their stories. All the stories that came to me weren't anonymous. They didn't come from new accounts. They didn't come from random people and random strangers. It came from people I knew or from friends. So 3-4 days ago, I got an anonymous story. I did not share it. And then I get a WhatsApp message from a musician friend of mine saying that this is a really good friend of mine. She's a singer in London and she really wants you to share the story, and he sent me the link. I said, I can't share anonymous new account stories. It's just not done. And he said, no, this happened to her. I was witness. You can take my word for it. So I went ahead and shared that story like that, and then it looked like once that happened, then another can of worms opened for that particular person. Everybody else had a very similar story to say about messaging inappropriately. So as long as I was concerned, we got so I used to call all of these people, call and ask them what exactly happened, and you know from their description that it's not fake. Yeah, true. It's in the way that we say it. So the one call that we eventually made from a retweet, we had a doubt because of the name that was shared with an ex-wife. So see, there were Varun Grover has been falsely named in this Me Too, and he's come forward, but he's not shamed the movement. He says he understands that instances the movement. He understands that women have finally found a voice. He gave the movement the dignity and also exonerated himself. A lot of us, all of us women who have voiced out for the women and some of the men who have shared their stories. My timeline is also filled with a lot of men who have shared their stories of sexual assault. So at which point we said we can no longer back the story. Whoever it is will have to, they have the same resources available to us. They can come forward to a lawyer, they can come forward to a journalist who will investigate, corroborate those evidences, and whatever it is, put their story out in public with full, what shall I say, backup of whatever they have to say. Come forward, because we are no longer, this is not about ex-girlfriends and ex-wives talking about or trying to get back or settling their scores with a relationship that went bad. That was not that. And from the beginning, we kept tweeting and retweeting, all of us women telling us that you must be a special kind of evil to hijack this away about, there are victims who are actually sharing the stories. So don't take it away and make it, don't let it become an ugly turn. We kept, talking about it. So a lot of people, I think the first day when a couple of people said, these are anonymous, they didn't understand the difference between anonymous and identity protected.
Okay.
And when we said, here is an anonymous story, it was anonymous to the rest of the world.
But
we know who it
is.
is.
Okay.
We protected their identities. So we didn't share this only because it is anonymous. I said, one of the stories is me. I didn't put my name to it because I was afraid myself. And then when the first story came and then the second story came, and I said, chuck it. If not now, I don't know when I'll ever find the strength to say this. And I did. And I saw that more and more women came out against Mr. Vairamuthu, as with anybody. I remember one of these, when I spoke about a theatre personality, a couple of their friends were vehemently denying it with me on WhatsApp. I said, no, listen to me. One of them is actually a journalist who's saying that this happened to her. And then when 2 became 7, the same people came back and said, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, I denied and I tried to defend my friend. And finally, that theatre personality put out an apology, saying that I'm very sorry if I made all these women feel uncomfortable. So again, if we see the pattern, if one person has to say something about a person, people are not willing to believe. So now they want numbers. They want 8 people to say, else I won't believe you. Which is kind of sad too, But it's okay. At least if 8 people are saying it's a good thing. What happened with MJ Akbar? First 3 women, then 7, then 10, 15, and finally 30 women, I think. If the last count was 30 women speaking up against MJ Akbar. So now, until I spoke up, it was only me, only Chinmayi is speaking against Vairamuthu. Then Sindhuja Rajaram corroborated her own, experience with Vairamuthu, where he was behaving in a very creepy fashion with her. And a third person, her voice note has been doing the rounds. So now, now with all these people saying, I'm sure.
It happened. So
yeah, so there is more weight. So what would have happened if other women hadn't found the guts to speak up? I don't know. So eventually, and sadly, the truth of my story is based on the truth of other people's stories also. But sadly, when people say, where is your proof? Where is your proof? 2005, I don't know what exactly they expect as proof of a man who comes and hugs me, gropes me and behaves inappropriately. Does every woman have to walk around with a camera stuck to her 24/7? Does every woman have the proof of a man groping her in public transport? Does every woman have proof of somebody who touched her inappropriately as a child? No. And we don't. We can't.
Yeah, so about your personal, coming back to your own personal experiences, when you decided to come out about what happened to you, are you happy with how the public and the film fraternity took it? Are you happy with their response?
The public, I think, as I said, has been a lot of them, an overwhelming majority has been supportive. This is something that I did not expect. All the women, so many men, especially men with daughters, they get it. They get it way better than men with sons. And they're like, I know exactly what it is. I know, I'm very proud of you. I wish I can, bring up my daughters as brave as you. I had a music director calling me that I want to bring my daughters up just like you. He has 2 daughters. There has been an overwhelming silence as long as other singers are concerned, except I think Shakti Shri. She is the only one who actually came out on record on Twitter to say enough. She deserves our support. Mostly I can't think of, except Gibran, of course. Gibran also put out his tweet saying thank you, but everybody else has been silent. They don't want to speak up. It's very inconvenient to do all this. It's not very easy to do or speak up and do the right thing, things like that. And I'm not judging them for this. It's easy to do the easy things in life. And it's okay. I mean, it's their life, their choices. As long as the industry is concerned, there were so many. I mean, last year when Parvati Thiruvuttu, the women collective in cinema, I think it's called the WCC in Kerala. Parvati starting that meant that she no longer has film offers. They spoke up, especially after the sexual assault case in Kerala. They said something has to be done about the women in Malayalam cinema. So the most literate state in the country was not ready to take that. They could not take up women standing up for themselves. Parvati says in another interview that she's out of work. She's had no film offers. An actor as brilliant as her. She's not a meager talent. The industry was actually backing the assault accused. The Tamil industry, of course, Mr. Vishal has come forward and said there will be a 3-member committee that will be instituted. So now I think we'll have to petition the various unions within the industry to create awareness on what is okay for workplace, casual sexism to abuse, all that is not okay, how to sensitize women and men to behave in a certain manner, and if there is an issue, whom to go and speak to.
Another thing is, which could possibly be a reason, is that I have identified, is that in our movies that we watch, we constantly see a recurring storyline where a guy approaches a girl, the girl is not interested, and the guy keeps trying and trying and trying and pushing until she says yes. And it's only natural that people in reality who watch this on a regular basis tend to think that, okay, maybe if she says no and I keep trying, then like that movie, she'll say yes to me too. Do you think we need to have the responsibility to make better movies so that...
See, what's happening is that this is something that a filmmaker friend of mine told me. In slightly, let's say, once you go out of the city, there are no coffee shops. The concept of dating is alien. So we think we are sitting in cities and we are looking at the dating scene with the privileges that are given to us, right? Some of them are first time graduates, the first ever graduate in their own family. So they don't know how dating works. They're all awkward. Most of them have either gone to all girls schools or all boys schools, and suddenly they are in this place where they are working with each other, and then they are interacting with a girl for the first time. There's a lot of awkwardness. A lot of them don't know. And when they are showing a village love story where a boy is following and then the girl likes it, and then eventually beginning she doesn't like it and then she likes it. That is exactly how some love stories pan out. How else do they show it was an argument that a filmmaker put in, for which I don't have an answer. However, if you make this guy creepy, if you make this guy abusive, if you make this guy somebody who will slap you at the drop of a hat and give you moral lessons on how to be, all that needs to be changed. And thankfully, actually, I think the recent 2-3 years, there have been a lot of these dialogues have made filmmakers not have lines like this. If you notice in this film called Sethupathi, I think, there will be a line where a man comes and says, "Sir, em pondatti kaanam poita. Ava yarodey odi poita sir, enakku theriyum." He says that to the police officer. Then immediately, Vijay Sethupathiy's character says, எப்போ பாரு பொம்பளையோட நடத்திய கேள்வி கேட்டுக்கிட்டு மூணு நாளாக என்ன பண்ணிக்கிட்டு இருந்தேன் சொல்லிட்டு he sends. Then the SI, his junior comes and says, மனைவி காணவில்லை நடத்தையில் சந்தேகம்னு எழுதிக்கவா சார் அப்படின்னா, மனைவி காணவில்லை மட்டும் எழுதி போகிறேன், என்ன நடத்தையில் சந்தேகம். So you see, this is changing. Dialogues are changing. Men don't want these sexist lines anymore. You have, it's not gone to a radical shift where a woman is able to fend off 6 men and fight for herself. We still have scenes where the hero will have to come and rescue a heroine, even though she might be a trained martial arts, How else do you write these stories? You'll have to make the hero look like the savior. But it's come to a point where the woman is depicted as a martial arts practitioner, and she's fighting and things like that. She's able to fend off unwanted advances. So people are slowly changing these lines and changing how these scenes are portrayed. Eventually, I think, there'll be a lot more progressive cinema.
Okay, so now we've been talking about all the negative and all the bad things that are happening around in this city and in the industry, but is there any good experiences that, like, I'm sure there are many in a career as long as yours, but like pleasant people you like working with, any particular?
Everybody almost. I think except for that one instance, I have not had anybody send me lewd messages, no wrong texts, nobody's made me feel uncomfortable, nobody's made me feel unsafe. I have not been misbehaved with anywhere, any place. If I felt a little uncomfortable with somebody, I would always ask for help and make sure that, and actually the fact remains that until I got married, my mother always used to be around me. It's only post marriage that I'm moving around alone, taking care of my own career. I have a manager, but my mother never left me go alone anywhere. So that itself was like a huge cordon for most people. They never got through. So that is perhaps why I don't have a bad experience. My only bad experience was with a man whom I thought was as respectable as somebody who could be my father. So that is something I did not expect.
So now we have a few questions from our readers, and they've been looking forward to your responses, so it'd be great if you could answer them.
Sure. Hi ma'am, I'm a big fan of yours. Thank you for starting the Me Too movement. It is the need of the hour indeed. I have a question for you. So there is casual sexism everywhere, in our family, within our friends, workplace, everywhere. Can you tell us about the casual sexism experiences or moments that you faced within the industry or outside the industry?
how do I deal with everyday casual sexism? Sometimes I think we'll just have to be silent. Thankfully, in my immediate circles, at least the friends that I hang out with, there isn't too much casual sexism. But when people do joke, I do say that it's not fair. I smile, I laugh, but I say it's not fair. I don't agree with it. That's how I deal with it.
Hi Chinmayi, big fan. My question to you is what's happening next and how are you going to keep the whole Me Too momentum going, since a lot of people are afraid that it might get dissolved soon. So, yeah.
So the next step with the Me Too is something that all of us are repeatedly asking all the women to file complaints with the National Council of Women, who have come forward and said that they will expedite it, they will look into it, and they'll make sure that it is forwarded, legal steps will be taken. There are a lot of lawyers who have come forward to help pro bono all these cases. Do take the next legal steps. And I think the most important takeaway from Me Too is that all of us need to keep this alive, not just because it's a Twitter hashtag, but it's about keeping it alive in our own homes, keeping it alive in our schools, our colleges, our workplaces, by discussing about all these issues, by discussing about what is okay, what is not okay, discussing consent, discussing what makes you comfortable and what makes you uncomfortable. That's how you keep Me Too alive.
Hi Chinmayi, I think it's really brave for you to come out right now, and I really support you at this moment. My only question to you is, how do we improve systemic redressal for women who want to lay out their problems in the future? Like right now, there's no exact mechanism for women to take part in apart from Twitter. So what do we do when this Twitter wave is over? How do we include it in the system that we currently live in or work by?
First things first, how you can make this work is to find out if your office, your workplace follows the Vishaka guidelines. The verdict came out in 1997. Every central government office has had it in place, but a lot of women still didn't have it in them to go and complain or lodge a complaint. There's something called POSH, which is Prevention of Sexual Harassment at the Workplace. Check it out, speak to lawyers, speak to legal advisors, people that you know, psychologists. Make sure you set up a system, a redressal system at your own workplace, in your educational institution. If you live in an apartment complex, please tell all the families, call everybody, call them and ask them to sensitize their children about the good touch and the bad touch. Make sure that all these people, if you live in an apartment complex, make sure that you're having your security cameras. Ask kids to be not afraid when they come out with stories like this, and keep reminding ourselves and the others that it is not the shame of the victim.
Hi Chinmayi, I have been a huge fan of you, and recently I love your 96 movie songs. It's very blissful and beautiful. I have a question for you. What do you think are the difficulties for a woman to establish in the media career? Because since you have been in the media career for a long time, you will probably know. So it would be great if you could share some of your views. Thank you.
I don't know of particular issues with regard to a media career. I think for somebody who comes with no background in the media, maybe they might be a little worried. The families might be worried about these long working hours. Otherwise, I still maintain that I have felt safe working in the media. I have not had anybody misbehave with me or send me wrong or lewd text messages, and it has generally been that vibe around me. So it's been, I've felt safe, and I do know that more and more men and women are in this zone where, you know, talking to each other about what is okay and what is not okay is coming up a lot more. I think the media industry is as safe or unsafe as any other industry that you might find outside. So I hope this answers your question.
Do you think that the Me Too movement will sustain, or do you think that it will fizzle out?
So Me Too actually started in 2006. The founder was a lady called Tarana Burke, and from then on it was about women having to, who could come forward and share their stories that it happened to them as well. It's not something that happens in a rare case. And then when Me Too hit Hollywood and Harvey Weinstein's case came forward, and people very, very strong people decided to disengage and disassociate with him. And then Me Too, I think, broke into this scene with Raya Sarkar, which when she published her list of academicians who were accused of sexual harassment. And then after Tanushree Datta's case, we had, the restless quill Sandhya Menon and a girl of few words, Manisha Kukreja, I think, who started sharing stories of other victims who took them into confidence, and they protected their identities and shared their stories. More and more women started, once this gained momentum, all these women who first wanted to be anonymous came forward, put their own names and said, I'm no longer afraid and this is my story. So this is like any other movement. This will, I think this is the second wave, as they call it, for Me Too in India. It has just started. I really hope that more and more women from this gather the strength, gather the courage to identify their predators and name and shame them. I don't think I'm afraid of this movement fizzling out, or this will lose steam and people will forget about it, because what it has done is, it has shown us that the society is now willing to listen. It is huge, especially in a society that we believe is conservative. And finally, we see that people are listening. And the question is, are you ready to speak up? Speak up. The time is now.
Thank you so much for sitting and talking with us. It was a pleasure.
Same here. Thank you.